My space, your space. Your space, my space. Our space. OneSpace Love. My space, your space.
The OneSpaceLove Show for the love of music, lifestyle, well-being and culture while caring for our planet. On this show, I will be chatting with musicians, artists and creative minds that are living life on purpose by doing what they love.
OneSpace Love. My space, your space. Your space, my space. Our space. OneSpace Love. OneSpace Love. OneSpace Love.
Welcome, Daphne and I, to the OneSpaceLove Show, and it's so good to see you. We were just discussing off air that it's been around 6 years since we've seen each other. I mean, it just blows my mind, and so beautiful to see your joyful face again. How are you?
So happy to see you. It has been. I can't believe it's been 6 years. Time is not linear. That's for sure. We're all finding that out, right?
Isn't it true?
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, it is. I mean, the way you tell, actually, like I don't have children, but I people who have, my friends who have children, we, clock the time that way. It's like, oh, he's 19. What?
Mm-hmm. But it feels like a little, no time has passed. I really do try to practice by that you can't base things on time anymore, because it just feels like I saw you yesterday and we were hanging out at Woodford Folk Festival on the campgrounds in that incredible heat.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
That's really, I have to say, still all the festivals I've been to around the world, Woodford is my favorite, really.
Yeah.
It's just as a whole, the balance and the amazing offerings there, music and art. It's like the Burning Man of Australia. With no desert.
Yeah.
I mean, it's wonderful to see you. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, so beautiful to have you on. Thank you. Where are you right now? Because I actually didn't get clear. Yeah.
Oh, I'm in Costa Rica.
Beautiful.
I'm in Uvita, Costa Rica right now. Yes. So working on a few projects here with some friends, and friend of mine's working on an intentional community. So it's really great to see the vision coming together, and, people from all over the world creating a new way to be, and, as our indigenous, as our ancestors taught us. So I think also more and more we're paying attention to the linear, the world that we think is the world we should live in. Then we also can create other types of worlds. And actually Woodford was one of those places I saw that. So I love that.
It's that expansiveness of, everything is an illusion, and actually dreaming up what it is we want to see, rather than seeing what you're saying is in front of us in all that sometimes chaos. And it can be hard to take in at times, but knowing that it's not all set in stone, is it? We can change this.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I actually, working with you over the years, I totally saw that with all the events you created, and the way that I just love the oneness coming together through music and arts and the collaborative community. I know we all miss that.
We do.
In person.
I was thinking back of our relationship where, in that environment of the community, and there were so many moments we shared, actually, not only in Sydney, but, all around Australia. But I was just thinking, one of the very earliest moments, I was trying to remember how we actually connected. I was thinking, was it through Rob in Bali Spirit Fest? I was trying to remember.
That's what I love about my dear friends. Sometimes I can't remember how we met. I remember all the memories. I'm thinking, wait, where did it first begin?
I don't know.
Sometimes it's a circular thing,
Yes. That seems like the theme of our chat. It just felt like it was just, so fluid that it didn't really matter where it began, because it hasn't even, it's still continuous. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it could have been for sure Bali Spirit. I spent a lot of time in, again, I maybe have to do that. An even festival love is Bali Spirit and Woodford Folk. The two of them, they're very, very different, but two of my fave festivals. And yes, probably Rob, he connected me with a lot of people over the years, and super grateful to be connected with you.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Let's take you back now, because you were born in Texas. Is that right? Is that
Correct.
Where you grew up and born as well?
Born and raised in Texas.
Okay.
Yeah.
So take me back then. I mean, I feel excited to actually have this conversation with you because there's like parts that we've got to chat, backstage, or you actually stayed at my place, and we hung out at Woodford. But just to actually go in deep with you, I'm excited. It feels like you're in my home right now.
Yeah,
so
I wish I was.
Yeah, I know. So you grew up, and music feels like it was always something on your path. It's been there a very long time. Can you share where that began back in, the younger years of growing up in Texas?
Well, my dad and my mom told me, may her soul rest. You've met her before.
Yeah.
But she told me that my dad used to call me the singing baby. So I was a third child. So I think I had to kind of create my world because, you're kind of weaving and trying to find your space and your place. And so I, from a young age, I definitely was singing. I was really, really shy kid, if you would believe that. I didn't like to talk. A lot of people wouldn't believe that.
That's really hard to believe.
Yeah, like all the way through, I think almost fourth grade, I was super quiet. I love music and I love singing and everything, but I'd always kind of do I love to be in the choir, but I like to be in like the second or third row. And I never liked to do solos. I never wanted to be in the spotlight at all. And then, so through elementary school, I sang, in the choirs and stuff. My mom put me in violin lessons. So I took violin at, I think, third and fourth, fifth grade. And then in fifth grade, my principal, for whatever reason, I don't know why, Mr. Niehoff, I still remember his name. He singled me out and he said, I think you'd be great to lead the class. You should be the class leader, picking one girl and one boy to lead a fifth grade class. And we're going to bring you to the main office where kids from the other schools are going to meet. It was like a student council, student government.
Yeah.
And we're going to choose you to be that person, to be the leader. And then I was off to the races. So then I started talking and managing and producing and, at a young age there, I loved doing it. So, and I remember that same year, not on a musical note, but on an artistic note, I love cooking. Anybody who knows me knows that one of my dreams is to live in a place where I have a small little restaurant, and just make my little special recipes and, preferably by the beach. And, but around that age, my mom, my mom had 6 kids. So there's a big household and a lot of things to do. And I love being in the kitchen. I love cooking. So she started to let me, I think it was for my 10th birthday, I asked for a 10-pound bag of flour and the New York Times cookbook. I remember I still have it. It's like all tattered. And I started my Julia Child's kitchen. And she would drop me to the grocery store with a checkbook, if anybody remembers checkbooks.
Yes.
And I'd go in with my list with my sister and we'd get all the things. And then I'd make dinner and make charts about what we're going to be eating each day. And I just love creating that way. And I do brunch on Saturday for cartoons for my brothers. And so I remember that also being a memory of being creative, not necessarily through music, but through different creative arts. So I'm really interested in all of the arts, not only focused on singing, but music has definitely been the forefront for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, I mean, I love the passion of cooking because I always say that you don't have to particularly pick one creative path. Like it all is the same process, and it sounds like through that you gained your organization skills, which I know you've used later on. And all of those skills have led you to all those different paths you've been on. And then how did you get to choose to actually study music? I mean, you went and studied at 2 universities, the University of Texas, Austin, and the Old School of Folk Music in Chicago.
Yeah. It's funny because I started then in 6th grade, I got in the band and started playing flute.
Okay.
And then by the 7th grade, they made you choose. You couldn't play in the band and be in the choir. And I really wanted to sing. So I started, school choir, 7th grade. And my mom let me get a voice coach that year. She was really strict and I actually didn't really like her style at all. And I kind of I think my creativity is a little dampened at that time from that. And, I had her for a little while, but I stayed in choir and got but then I also got into other creative arts, gymnastics and cheerleading and other things. So it was always like balancing, all of the things. But I stayed in choir through high school. And when I went to university, I decided I wanted to, be in the music department, and got in the music department at University of Texas in Austin. But I started to study, it's classical. It's not, it wasn't the right school for me in the sense to finish it through, because I studied it, but I was, I felt I think a lot of musicians maybe that have the same story I've heard, it's feeling a little caged in with these are the classical pieces and this is what you have to sing. And I remember we had juries, so you'd have to sing, whatever arias and in front of the jury. And I was like, 18. And I was like, I don't want to sing that song. You just didn't really do that. So the dean of the school was like, I don't think this program is for you and then I was like, well, I really like Joni Mitchell and Joan Baez, so it was definitely a different path. And she actually recommended for me to move to the communication school, which also had the production side of music and arts, to see, to work in studios and stuff. So I started to work in recording studios by 19, 20, the old Neve boards and tape and splicing. And so that got me really interested in both sides, the behind the scenes and also being a performer. And so, I had a pretty well-rounded situation going on. And that actually took me, I feel like if I'd stayed only in the vocal department, my life would be really different. Because as always, you're just following that flow. But I ended up getting a job at a recording studio, like an internship. And then that producer introduced me to a producer in Los Angeles. That producer had come to Austin, Texas. I was in Austin, and said, I have a studio in Los Angeles. If you ever come out, you should come work for me. So that gave me the I want to. And so I ended up going maybe a week after I graduated university and moved to Los Angeles from Texas. And then that kind of took me on a whole path. So it's interesting how the things that we think, I should only study this. And then I, kind of went with the flow a bit on that. I didn't end up going to Old Town Folk School of Music till later, after I was in LA, and then took a little bit of break and went to backpack through Europe. That thing. And then came back with no money and realized, oh, shoot. So my sister's like, come live with me in Chicago. And then I found the Old Town School of Folk Music. And that was more of a more casual, I'd say, Old Town School of Folk Music is awesome, but they'd be like, if you want to get a beer before class, feel free. I was like, oh, this might be my place. Glass of wine. Okay. So,
And tell me,
and I feel like I'm still studying every day, still studying.
Oh, me too. Me too. Yeah. One of my questions was, how did you get to LA? And so now you've taken us to LA, and I can see now that path came through that door with the recording studio. How do we then blend these worlds of the spirituality and folk music? Was that in LA before you came back?
Yes. So in LA, actually, no, it was actually after Chicago, but in LA, I got the job at the recording studio, but it wasn't going to pay much. So when I got there, I applied for a job at for NBC at the Tonight Show. Maybe So I ended up getting the internship and a internship/job there. And so I got thrown into a really cool, class of 35 people from around the world that had come to work on the show. And so, working and seeing, one of the first musicians, I talked to my friend Shiva yesterday. Yeah. And I told her, she's like, you go to Memphis and see Al Green. He's a pastor at this church. And I was like, the first person I saw on the Tonight Show, I was 22. I was in the green room, working, show. And he comes in and he's the guest that night. And I was just floored. And then he did when I watched what he did a kirtan kind of. I didn't know what it was at the time. Yes. But he's singing, and then he had people sing back, and it was a reciprocal. He even got off the main stage in Studio One, which is kind of far away from the audience, and walked on the floor and got up in the rafters, and it's singing, his songs. And so he had this, call and response. Yeah. And I mean, I didn't know what that was, but I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I want to be doing that. I was working backstage, but so Al Green, maybe my first guru in that.
I just got goosebumps then, because it feels like you've resonated with that exchange of energy that he was able to bring across. And then you had that moment that's the path I want to go with music. Yeah.
Yeah. And, it took me a while to get to that path. I ended up working in a job, worked in the recording studio for some time, as everybody does in LA. I think at that age, started waiting tables at night and made more money doing that, cocktailing at a salsa club. Until like 4:00 in the morning. And you can burn the candle both ends at that age. But not practicing yoga at all. And then a friend of mine gave me a VHS tape. If anybody remembers what those are, say dating ourselves. But it was Eric Schiffman and the actress Ali McGraw. Mm-hmm. And I was just floored. I was like, oh my gosh, so I started practicing with that tape. And then I moved then I went on that journey to Europe, came back and ended up in Chicago with that tape still. So when I had an opportunity, a good friend of mine actually said, hey, I met this guy and I'm moving to Vegas, but my apartment is paid off for 2 months. And maybe you want to come back to LA. And I was like, sure. So I moved back to LA and moved into her apartment. And didn't have a job at that time, but was looking for that yoga teacher, Eric Schiffman. So I went to YogaWorks. Mm-hmm. Maybe a lot of people know YogaWorks in Los Angeles. It was one of the premier studios for some time. And I just walked to the front desk and was like, hey, I'm looking for Eric. And then I met the manager and this whole exchange happened. And then ended up that they hired me that day. Because mm-hmm. the manager said, what are you doing here? And I said, well, I was living in Chicago, working at this, restaurant and going to school there. And ended up the restaurant I worked at is a restaurant she and her husband would go to every year for their anniversary. So it just, all these little threads. Mm-hmm. And she's like, well, you should work here. So I started working there. And that's when I really started studying and, being with all these wonderful teachers over the years. And then observing the music that was being played there, which I hadn't heard much of. Mm-hmm. There's a singer named Sheila Chandra. I think maybe you might know her.
Yes.
So I spoke with her on the podcast I'm doing now. Mm-hmm. And I was telling her that, her CD was on repeat for, 2 years or whatever, and she was telling me how it wasn't created as spiritual music originally, but so we never know where our music will land is what I'm saying. And that was one of that I told her that was her music for me during those years were pivotal in me hearing a new sound and a new way of like, oh, maybe, this kind of music is so, I could see the effect of the music on people practicing. And so, that was my kind of shift to the spiritual world. Mm. But what was funny is that I would work in the yoga studio in the morning or 2 or 3 shifts. And then I would go work at the restaurant at night.
Okay.
The salsa club. And I would see the same people. So, that was a funny part. Like, hey, I just started yoga this morning. So I like that. I thought that's the kind of yogi I want to be.
Yeah.
I want to be able to just, ride the wave on both sides. And I'm not great at discipline. So.
And where did Shiva Ray come into it then?
So that was one of the teachers she was working at YogaWorks when I got there. Okay. And we became friends through, I was working the front desk and she was totally into music, same as me. I was also talking about this to Sheila about how funny it is that, not funny, but how interesting it is that we had stores that we could go to, that had curators in the store. They'd be like, you should get this CD. You should get this album. This is like the new,
I remember.
I'm sure there was a store where you grew up.
I lived in New York when I was in the fashion industry. And I remember going to the music store and they'd come right up to you and they'd suggest what it is to buy. Yeah, it was such a great thing. Yeah.
It was. There was a store in Santa Monica called Hear Music, HEAR. So, once I became friends with Shiva, I wasn't taking her yoga classes yet because I was doing Iyengar and I was doing Eric's classes. And, but we started going to Hear Music together. And there was a couple of different curators there, but definitely one in the world music department and would, say, you should try this one, you should try that one. And so we'd hear all this amazing music and started to bring that into, the mix at YogaWorks. And then, Shiva started, I believe, I could be wrong, maybe you should interview her and ask her, but I believe she was the first one. She was the first one to play music in a yoga class at that time because she had lived around the world doing studying dance in and she had gone to Indonesia, she'd gone to India and Africa. So she had the movement in dance and had a master's in dance from UCLA. So it was like combining the movement, dance, and music. So she started to play music in classes. And I remember in the very beginning, some of the management was not happy about that because, there's this pure thing about no music in the class and that this is yoga, that's not yoga. That happened a lot in that community for some time. And I totally understand the purity of things, but I think that America is such a fusion place anyway. And I could see the profound effects for myself. I'm practicing with music. I like practicing in silence too, but music takes me to places that, that silence doesn't with the movement. And so she was the first one. And when I started to observe that, then I started to go to her classes and really dive into that transformation. And so that was, maybe early 2000s, I think. And then I started to organize retreats for Yoga Works. And so we organized one of the first ones going to Hawaii, and that was with Jai Uttal and Shiva Ray.
Rama bolo, bolo bolo ram. 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 Rama bolo,
Oh my gosh, that would have been a turning point for you.
For sure. And, I brought my sister and then my mom and dad were always people love my mom and dad because they've come with me on so many adventures around the world. And Shiva really adopted them as her parents. So she'd invite them to everything. And we were just talking about that the other day, but that trip was epic. It was actually my first time to Hawaii, growing up with 6 kids in Texas in a middle-class family, you don't just take your 6 kids to Hawaii, So it was my first really foray into that culture. And I just fell in love with Pele and the chanting and the singing and being with Jai and Jeffrey Gordon was there at the time. He's no longer with us, but yeah, so that was it was at Kalani. And I still remember the feeling in my bones thinking, oh my gosh, I want to be doing this.
There's something about anyone that hasn't listened to Jai Uttal, there's a resonance to his voice. It's really heart-based, isn't it? Just goes to the core. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so did you, I know through personally, you got to then work more with Jai. So take us on, how did the path transition where Daphne got to share her music, her essence?
Yeah. The first time I remember being at Yoga Works and they'd have all kinds of things coming through their events and we as staff could go to them, at cost or no cost, depending. And his was the first kirtan. I didn't know what kirtan was. So they hosted one with him and I remember going in and I was blown away. I'd been singing in a church. I was actually, still singing in a church in Beverly Hills. So when I moved to Los Angeles, I grew up Catholic. So I was doing the Catholic church and singing there. And a woman named Maria was a guitarist and singer. And so I'd do stuff with her. And I didn't play guitar until I was 26, the first time I bought a guitar. But I've been singing for a while. And anyway, so I'd been at the church, but I hadn't experienced anything like kirtan, And so I went that night and I was like, oh my, I was so blown away, as many people are their first experience. Everybody singing together, Jai is amazing, but all of that channeling, Neem Karoli Baba in the room, I'm sure. So after that, it was funny because then oh wait, are we supposed to be singing like this? So I called my mom. I was like, Mom, we have this. I'm super close with my mom, and so I called her and said, I went to this concert, but they were singing about elephants and monkeys and things like that. Do you think it's okay that we do that as Catholics? And she said, I don't think so. I don't think that the Catholic Church would believe in that. And I think she, at that point, thought I'd joined a cult. And it was, I guess, but so then she said, well, ask your priest at the Beverly Hills Church. Just ask him what he believes, maybe he can help you. So I did. This guy was super cool, like surfer guy, he did everything, but I think he's like, no problem. You're singing to God. It's, he was totally integrated that way. So it gave me that permission.
How beautiful that he gave you that permission. I mean, imagine if that door was closed.
He had said no. Yeah. I might have done it anyway as a rebel, but
yeah.
So anyway, so he told me that. And then the next kirtan I went to was Krishna Das with Ram Das in LA. And I thought we were going to blow up and go out of the room because Ram Das had his chant, Ram, 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 Ram. Like it was the Unitarian Church, like 2,000 people. Ram, Ram, for I don't even know, half an hour, 45 minutes. And we were all crying and, pulsating. It was amazing. I went with my friend Andrea, and I still remember that moment. It was my one and only connection with Ram Dass. But anyway, yeah. So then Jai, I really got closer to him on a couple of that first one in Hawaii. And then he did, I actually invited my mom for that one because she had thought, we've got a cult going on here. So when she met Jai in Nubia, she was like, oh, they loved him. So then Jai invited my mom and dad. My dad couldn't come because he was working, but to come to the kirtan camp. And at the time, Nubia was organizing everything for Jai. And I had started organizing stuff for Shiva already through that time. We had come close, and I started working with her and her husband, ex-husband now. And so he said, well, Nubia, we need a little help. Maybe you can help us organize. And then I said, well, then we can exchange. I'll come, and maybe can my mom come with me as exchange? He's like, yeah. So my mom came down to the kirtan camp in Guatemala. Wow. We went from I don't think you can sing that to she's, in a kirtan camp. It was 5 years later, right? 5 years later.
Did you get her the outfit and everything?
No, she did have yoga clothes though. So
yeah.
But it's funny because actually I saw Jai and Nubia post. Their son is 16 now, has his own band. We're talking about time. And when we were in Guatemala, he was crawling on the floor, a little baby, like a little Gopal. Yeah. So I said to him, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how time has passed. But so yeah, that was the first connection. And then, working behind the scenes and connecting with him that way. I just love Jai and Nubia. They're just gems. And they gave, again, permission. You can do this. And to be honest, I've only done one kirtan camp with him, except for the one online I did recently, because I started just to go, and then I couldn't line up with where he was going to be and I was going to be. I mean, a few times I went to go see them in California, but yeah, that was the first experience, and Lake Hachimang was amazing. It was really powerful experience for me, and being there with my mom. So, and I ended up riding Saraswati Mata on the lake there as part of the, when you're in the circle and they say, okay, now go outside and melody and write something and then come back and share. So that was the first kind of melody that came to me with my mom. So it's been amazing full circle.
And just share, Saraswati Ma, what that means in reference to that you were there with your mother. That is the mother energy, isn't it? That's calling in the mother of the divine. Yes. Yeah.
And it's funny because I hadn't really thought about how powerful that experience was until my mom passed in June, this last June. I realized, oh my gosh, that was kind of the planting of the seed of that journey of, the ride with Saraswati and Ma, and being supported in grace with that particular mantra as I moved around the world. And that's definitely the one that resonates with people in any culture, in any language. That's what's amazing.
Mm. songs still resonate. I mean, I just got goosebumps. It's like your mother's presence is with us as we say that.
I think
because
yeah. Mm-hmm.
I hope it's okay to say that, but I just felt that. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. She's been around. She was here last night too. So.
So, because I was going to say, if you only picked up the guitar I've always seen you singing and playing the guitar. So you only picked that up at 26. That's incredible. And so and then you.
The only reason I did is because my roommate was tired of hearing me sing in the shower and sing. He actually we went to hear music, and I remember he introduced me to Alison Krauss. I
love Alison Krauss. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
He I introduced him to Alison Krauss. Let's get this right. He introduced me to Sean Colvin. And Sean Colvin's album he introduced me to is Live 88. And it was just her acoustic guitar playing and singing. And I was blown away by it. And so he's like, I think you should get a guitar. So I went to the music store, and then there was, in the music store, there was also a little brochure with a guitar teacher's name on it. I can't remember his name now. Tom Winslow. How do I remember that name? Oh. And I started doing lessons with him. And it was, but I hadn't thought about, maybe I could play guitar. I just was looking for players to play with me. And once I started to play, I was able to be sustained myself, and I think that, and I'm still, I'll say, a beginner in that department when I play with master guitarists. But I really encourage anybody who's listening, if you've ever wanted to play an instrument and you think I'm too old or too young or whatever, I encourage you, the way that you're going to play is go buy one. And I bought a cheap one. It was like $190 or something, a couple $100 maybe. And I kept it for a lot of years before I then spent a lot of money on another one. But it really gave me the freedom and also the courage to then sing and play at the same time, because if you only are singing, then you've got to find, I don't have to, but finding other people to play with you. So that gets a little challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I know I didn't play guitar when I was young at all. Sometimes I wish it started at 7 or 6, but it is what it is. And then you need to find the really good guitarist who can do all the cool things. I'll play the rhythm guitar.
That's when you get all the multi-instrumentalists coming in on the tours in all the different countries, which I've experienced with you.
Yes.
Emmanuel and Clayton and H.
Yes.
Yeah.
I miss all of them.
Yeah, beautiful community. So did you pick up playing the harmonium as well? Back on those.
That's funny you ask. When I left Los Angeles to work for the Bali Spirit Festival, I got invited to move to Bali, and it was another turning point in my life where I was ending a relationship, moving out of my apartment, ending a job, and like, what am I doing? And then I got a message from Megan Pappenheim and Rob. And I knew them through working. I didn't know Rob actually, but I knew Meg through working with Shiva over the years. And so they wrote me and said, we're starting this festival. We need some help with production. We'd love to bring you on the team. And I was like, I think I want to stay in LA. At that point, I was trying to go another direction. So I was having a meeting with like India Ree's manager and, moving that direction. And then actually Shiva's the one that said, just go for 6 months and try it. And if you don't like it, you come back. So I decided, okay, I'm going to go. And so then from my going away present, Shiva and Jai bought me a harmonium.
Oh,
so I carry it to Bali with my guitars and everything.
Was it a little portable one or
no?
Because I've got the big one, and every time I move, I'm like, why am I bringing this to the next place? It's so heavy. I'm looking at it right now in front of me. It's so big.
No, it's like so mine ended up actually as a Yoga Barn resident harmonium because, I took it there and, I love it. I actually want to pick it up again, but I really was still, connected with guitar. And then I started to travel more, and it's nearly impossible to travel with one of those things and not break it or something.
Yeah.
And I remember Dave Stringer came to Bali when I was living there, and he came and he's like, what happened to this harmonium? He's trying to help me. He's fixing all the reeds, and you're living in a moldy place, and he's like crying crying for the harmonium. Poor baby's not taken care of. I was like, I don't have AC. So anyway, yeah, I really love the harmonium, and I didn't resonate with it as much as I did with guitar, and then the practicality of touring. And I talked to Jai about this some years ago, and he travels with his guitar. I think he still does harmonium too, but he plays the guitar a lot. So it just makes it, as a moving person from here to there. But one thing I could do is just have people have harmoniums at their house, like you.
Yeah, you can come and stay with me.
I'm there. Yeah. So, but yeah, I think harmonium, there's nothing like a harmonium, for all the different resonances and being able to sound and without having to think much. So
I like the harmonium in kirtan because you can work it with the rhythm and build the audience up. But I mean, you can do that also with the guitar. I mean, you can also, speed it up, speed it down.
But I do. I sense when people play harmonium in kirtans, people sing louder because the harmonium's a little louder, so it gives people more freedom. So I do like that possibility. So who knows? I might get to the next. Harmoniums. I'm in Costa Rica. I don't have a harmonium, but
yeah. What is it true that Rob also said, come over and I'll produce and record your first debut album? Was that that moment in Bali?
That's true. Yes. Yeah. So Rob is actually responsible because, they had offered me this deal to come and start the festival and have a house and do all this stuff. And I still was like hemming and hawing. I was on the beach in Boracay, actually, trying to decide what I was going to do with my life. Not a terrible place to be, but then Rob said, I heard that you're a singer, songwriter, and how about we throw in the deal? I'll record. I have a studio. Oh, no, he said, I have a studio in my house in the jungle, and I'm happy to bring you on and let's do your first EP as part of the deal. And I was like, oh, I knew he got that little carrot or the cookie. And once he said that, I was like, okay, I'm going back to LA, pack my stuff up, sell my car. And I think, if I remember correctly, it's like 10 days later, I was on a plane to Bali. I went from Boracay, swooped back to LA. I'd already moved out of my apartment. My sister had all my stuff. And I got on a plane, and it changed my life again.
And that was... and
that was end of 07, early 08.
And you did not stay there for 6 months, did you?
Yeah. 6 months turned into, what are we in now? 2021. I think I was there consistently 6 years.
Yeah.
And then longer with the festival. But after about 6 years, then I was touring a lot. So, but I still based there. So yeah, I'll say, be careful when you say you're going to go to Bali for 6 months. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that can totally understand because they're probably in Bali now. Yeah. But that was an amazing place. It was I was just talking to my friend Yoshi and saying, Bali for me was the hub. It was, quite a bit like Los Angeles for me too. It was a hub of creatives and people from all over the world that were doing stuff. There is pulse and Bali was even more raw in a sense because there were a lot of people there that were starting or creating new projects and testing things out and taking getting out of the city and getting into Ubud and putting their visions into reality and then testing it on the market there and then going out. And I've seen so many of those creatives out in the world, and it's awesome.
Yeah, and it definitely embraced fusion. That fusion, really mixing up the dance, the kirtan, it was a place where it was all happening.
Yes.
There was some other teachers along the way that were really key for you. Jonathan Goldman and Ellen Watson. Yeah.
Yes. So I'm still working with Ellen that you brought it up. I just texted with her. Okay. Those of you who don't know Ellen, she is a force of nature, and she's 72, but like a 7-year-old, 72-year-old. She's taught me so much about play, about trusting in the flow. And I met her actually at Esalen. She was at Esalen for about 30 years, Esalen Institute. And so I met her there, but then we ended up meeting up again in Bali some years later. And she came to my kirtan at Yoga Barn. And she said, hey, I love what you do. And she was one of Gabrielle Roth's first in the first teacher training. So I think she said there were 8 people in that training at Esalen. So before it was 5 rhythms, even she was working in that, in that field, in embodied arts and of all kinds. I mean, so she said, I really would love to marry the dancing with the singing. I think that's the one thing I find is missing is we either dance or we sing, but we don't have, in that format. So we started something called Spirit Dance Soul Song back in 2009, I think it was, and working together doing those collaborations. And that was so much fun. I learned so much from her. And I love it because we had a little bit of a lull right before COVID and things like that. And then once COVID hit, we're all trying to figure out what we're doing. Those of us who travel a lot are event producers, et cetera. And we've come back together, and we have one of her dear friends and mine now. She's a phenomenal woman. She's like a super mom like you, a super creator like you, and balancing it all, the plates spinning. She's a singer-songwriter, and also 5 rhythms trained. And so we've created something called Vibrance.
Yes,
and it's a collaboration of all the embodied arts and the creative arts, and getting back to our roots of the medicine and the medicinal roots of music and movement, which we are seeing is so important, in these times. So we're really excited. We haven't launched the company yet. We've been in birthing in the last 6 months, and we'll be putting something out shortly in the next couple of months. So I'm excited to share that.
Yeah.
And then Jonathan Goldman, I had, had all his CDs, everybody, I think, over the years. He's like he's like the troubadour of sound, and from the States. And so Ellen and I ended up going to one of his immersions in Colorado together after years of saying, we want to see him, whatever. So we did some studying with him, which was amazing because I hadn't gotten into the just pure toning, without having to think about lyric or melody or all those things. So one of the profound experience I had with him is they did like a 24-hour toning event where people toned in groups. Like I think we had 6 groups. So there was somebody toning in the center for a whole 24 hours. And I never had, your body just feels like it's coming apart and coming back together. So, I think he's definitely one on the forefront. I think a lot of people that do teach this sounding and toning somehow are connected to him from original days of the 70s. He and his wife are lovely, and they're groovy, I'll say. True 70s.
What has, talking about the sound and the resonance, so everything that you've mentioned on today's talk, it just feels like your whole life has been in flow. Have there been some moments where you've fallen off and you've had to get back on the flow? Like, are there some tools that, or is that more in your personal life, or, as far as career, it's always been, or your mission, it's always been flowing? Share some of those moments.
Yeah, I think, I'd say that there's definitely a trust in the flow of the creative for me. And I'm actually now working with Sheila Chandra. She is doing coaching for creative, coaching artists into creative careers. And it's been really helpful for me because one of the things that's great, I just go with the flow, but at the same time, having some organization and, and end goals is really helpful. When when I record albums, I definitely have that structure in place, mostly. So I'd say I definitely fall off my practice, both, whether I'm doing physical or, meditation or music. I have to keep reeling myself back in because I get interested in a lot of things. Friends will say I'm like squirrel, like, oh, that over there, that's cool, or whatever that. And then, so one thing is, is a positive thing is I'm spontaneous and I can go with what's happening. And at the same time, to find a balance of structure and foundation, I'm finding working in this new company has been great for me, to have accountability to 2 other people, where usually I'm on my own doing my own thing. And sometimes I just let things fall by the wayside and nobody's making me accountable, I just go to the next thing.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a soul like me. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see.
Yeah. So, because I love, when we're on these spiritual journeys, there's a lot of moments when we are in that lane of flow. But in my personal journey, it has brought me a lot of circumstances that I've had to pause and look at and almost go through those dark nights of the soul. What has it been for you along the journey that has helped break you open even more to share more from that heart space, from that space to be able to hold that for other people?
Yeah, you say the dark night of the soul.
Yeah.
It's interesting. For me, I was living a bit in a bubble, traveling a lot and, having one of the ways that I found for sure that gave me or stopped me a bit to stop and look and, reconfigure my life is being in a relationship that I realized, this is not going to work for me. And I needed to find what it is that I really wanted, what I valued. And so there are two things. The first time maybe that was like 2014. And I ended up going to do a program called Hoffman Process. It's a Hoffman Institute out of England, actually, but they have a headquarters in California, Northern California. And that was talk about being broken open and going back to your childhood and identifying some things that have happened and helping to see clearly, the patterns that we've created that came from our parents. No blame at all. It's just, what do we learn? How do we take those patterns on? And then, unconsciously continue those patterns without saying, hey, wait a minute, that pattern doesn't really work for me, or that pattern works for me. Right. So that was
doesn't that come up in the relationships you have? I mean, that's when it's completely, we thank those relationships because that's when it magnifies to you where those cracks are and where you need to go and bring attention to. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that really did bring me on a journey to say, okay, it was another kind of letting everything go and moving on. It wasn't a physical. Well, it was. I had to move out of my ex's house. So yeah, it was a physical thing, packing the boxes and all those things. And, and asking the questions of, what do I want? Or is it societal that I think that I should do something that is appropriate to do at this age? And so that was a big shift. And then once I made my decision and got clear, I just was like, I knew what was happening next, but it took me probably 6 to 7 months to finally be clear about it. And a friend of mine calls it a full body yes.
Yeah.
So she's like, if it's not a full body yes, your body, what does she say? To my friend Dorian, who's a beautiful teacher and coach in Thailand, but she says, if you ask the question and really sense into your body will never lie to you. Your body will either close or open with that question. And your mind will try to, convince you otherwise. But your body will tell you immediately, okay, it's not going to work. So, that was powerful for me. And then, I wanted to speak a little bit to grief because grieving, first of all, I hadn't really looked at grief as when you lose a relationship, but that's like a powerful grief. I kind of went on my way and started traveling again and didn't face the grief at that moment. And then in 2017, we lost my nephew in an accident. He was 23.
Yeah.
And that was a tsunami of grief for our family, for just our community. And it was a moment I remember then laying in bed at my parents' house and thinking, what's the purpose of it all? Like, you have a kid, you take care of the kid, or you're born and you do all this stuff and then you die. So I got in a place where I was like, I don't want to do anything. I'd gotten off the road. I decided to be there with my mom and dad and my brother. And then I was like, I don't need to write any more music. I don't need to do anything. I'm done. You know, I'm whoever's out there listening. I think when that happens, somebody dies in your family. There's a part of me that was like, I've done enough. I could die now. Not to be morbid or feel sorry for myself, but you know, I felt like, okay, complete. And it took me a good year with the encouragement of my dear friend in Tokyo. She has helped me manage tours there, and she kept writing me and saying, "Are you okay? Are you okay? I think you need to come to Nagano, the mountains in Japan, and I think you need to make music for your nephew. You need to do it for him, and don't think about yourself." And so I flew back to Japan. I spent almost 10 years now in Japan touring, but she's been one of my best friends and sisters, and knew my family. And yeah, we went out there, and I mean, I cried almost every day, all day long, but you know, doing ceremony for him and then writing. And this is, you know, Soul Songs, my last album, was really born of the grief that was there inside. And, you know, I'd say it was almost in service, not to myself. And that was a powerful experience because I got out of my own way, I'd say.
Yeah.
So that was a beautiful experience. And, you know, now my mother passed 8 months ago. And again, it was not as big of a tsunami because we had known she was not well, but
yes,
still there's that, again, questioning of purpose. And then with that whole grieving process, then my relationship grief started coming up. I was like, where's this coming from? So, being present in the precious moments of joy and, you know, gratitude, and then being present in, you know, some days I'm walking along and I see, like, I don't know, a flower or something, and I'll just start crying, remembering my mom or my nephew and thinking, I wish they were here. And then, you know, you move through it and with it and dance with it. And that's what I've been finding helps me a lot to continue being also in community as much as I can. And so thank you for asking that question. It's a long answer, but I think there's a big grieving process going on, whether you've lost somebody or you're in the grieving process of not being in the same flow of the life that you knew before COVID. So I think there's a big opportunity for us to speak to grief and the ways that we can move through it and balance. And I try to move or dance, sing, or something daily. Yeah. Even if it's just, you know, like people think it's funny. I like BTS, the Korean pop group. So I love that song, right? Dynamite. And so I'll play it and I'll do my exercise.
My children play that in our car trip to school, like daily and on full blast. And we're all dancing. And I'm thinking people must drive past this car and go, what is going on in that car? But it's like their energy.
Called medicine.
Energy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's called good medicine, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just grateful for that. You know, to have the tools, and I think we all have the tools. If you can move your feet, if you can talk, you can. You know, they say in Africa, right? If you can talk, you can sing. If you can walk, you can dance. If you can breathe, you can practice yoga, right? So they don't say that in Africa, maybe in India, but anyway, my point is that we all have the medicine that's inside of us, and we don't need gurus all over the world. You can find them if you like, but you're right, play a song in your car and sing along to Dynamite. I mean, it sounds goofy, but you'll feel uplifted after a 2-minute song.
I loved that in hosting, you know, the amount of events that were hosted through OneSpace, but I absolutely loved watching that transition, almost like a pop in the room. People walking in quite rigid and controlled, and I you know, especially the men that would come along with their partners. You know, I don't sing. I you know, I definitely don't move my body. And then you just watch this emergence and complete shift in the room. And I've watched that with you leading, and you know, it's just so beautiful to watch the joy and the childlikeness that comes out in that transition from every soul, no matter who walked in the room.
I love that. Yeah, just remembering that it's there. It's not. Yeah, it's accessible in any moment, and we forget. And I think, you know, being in Bali as long as I was living there, I loved the fact that you'd have everybody there was an artist, right? And even if I remember asking this driver. I knew he was a driver. That's what he did. So I said, "What do you do?" He said, "I'm a painter." Which I thought is so cute. It's like, that's right. He's a painter. That's what he does. Sure, he makes money driving all day, but that's not who he is. And sometimes I think in the Western world, we get stuck in the fact of identity of I'm this or I'm that. And when we're all just children trying to find our way back to playing again,
I love that. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Well, let's finish up now with you're working on right now, Vibrance and Voice of Vibrance, and then you've got a podcast that's about to be launched.
Yes.
Where can we?
And I'm gonna excited to have you on.
I would be honored to be on.
Yes. So we the podcast is Voices of Vibrance, because we're interviewing people around the world, artists, creative artists, all walks of life. And, putting their voice into the mix of what brings vibrance to their life. What are they, what lights them up? And I'd love to hear stories from people of all walks of life. And so that's one thing we're doing with them. And then we're going to Kauai in a couple of weeks to shoot our first online course, which will be coming out shortly. So that's going to be exciting to be able to share that. I mean, I know that people want to get outside. I totally get that. And then also giving people tools. If we can't get together in person, it's too soon, that we can connect, online for now, but looking forward to in person. We actually have an in-person retreat that will be happening. I know you're in Australia.
No, that's okay.
But we'll be doing one in Colorado by the Rocky Mountains, the foothills of the Rocky Mountains, and outside of Boulder. And so that'll be an in-person, outdoors, really fun event, feeling of one space fit. And we'll have a week long and then a 1-day festival with music. And it's going to be a lot of families and community. And that's in August. Our website is vibrance.global. And so you can find everything there. Also, our Instagram is the same, vibrance.global. And my Instagram is Daphne, DAPHFREE.
Yep.
And my website's daphneC.com. So you can find all those things. Yeah. And I really, really, putting the intention there for us to be back together sooner than later.
I'd love to get you back to Australia.
Yeah, as soon as they open their borders, let me know.
Yes. Thank you so much for having this chat with me and going deep and being on the OneSpaceLove Show.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You've been listening to the OneSpaceLove Show, and I'm your host, Steph Pappas. You can head over to onespace.love, join the community, sign up to the mailing list, and there's also all the links there for our social media, our YouTube channel, and you can catch up with all the previous shows over there. So that's onespace.love.